Hi everyone, welcome back to JPWHUTV for another John Talks To podcast. Very, very happy to get to introduce this next guest. It's, God, I sound like a chat show host there. Before I introduce him, I just want to say thank you very much to everybody that really smashed the 750 subscriber target 2 weeks early. It was meant to be down at the end of the month, but you guys have absolutely hit it. There's been somebody who's unsubscribed today, so sorry to see you go, but you're missing a great podcast. I really hope you're going to come back, because we've got a colossus of a man on today in more ways than one. He's one of the few West Ham supporters I've ever met that's taller than me. He's huge in the West Ham's community in terms of what he's done over the last few years with which we'll come on to in a moment. But I am very happy to announce to the audience of JPWHU TV, Mr. Dave Walker. How the devil are you, sir?
Well, I'm a lot better after that intro, I have to say. I could use you to make me feel better on a rainy day, that's for sure. So, no, I'm very good, John. I think your words are slightly unjustified, but very much appreciated. So, no, I appreciate that, mate. And pleasure to be here. I hope you're well. And before we start, I just want to say I'm a massive admirer of your backdrop. That's phenomenal, mate.
Well, not 25 quid from Amazon. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm very good, mate. I hope you're keeping well.
Yeah, I'm doing well, mate. How are you keeping?
Very good, mate. Very good.
And more specifically, are we going to get a drum solo from you later on?
Well, listen, I've got the instruments. Any party, any time. That's the slogan. So you never know.
So, all right, Dave, we'll come on to that, because it's quite a funny story. For those that don't know you, I'm sure everybody in the UK does, but there's quite a few subscribers all over the world, which is great. There's a guy out in Bangkok. I've had AJ from Kiwi Hammers TV on as well. It's a great laugh. Me, him, and Baz spent 2.5 hours talking about the upcoming fixtures. It was a long slog, but a very good video. Okay. So, yeah, Dave, just talk about yourself first and foremost. How did you get into West Ham?
On the social media side, or as a fan?
We'll come to the social media side in a moment. Just how did West Ham come into your life?
Born into it, pure and simple. I'm from a West Ham family. I say that. I mean, my mum actually grew up in Chelsea, just off of the King's Road, and then for some unknown reason, they decided to move to Upton Park in a street called New City Road, and they moved next door to my dad, who's a staunch East Ender from an East End family. They met and then had a special kiss, and little Dave was born. So when I was born into a West Ham baby grower, and there was no looking back. You know, I'm from a family of West Ham fanatics, and it was always the case. Always talked about when I was a kid. It was West Ham. You play it in the street with a ball. In those days, the only time you come back in was when it was too dark to see the football. Back in the good old days, where society was a bit more trustworthy than it is now, and and when I wasn't playing football in the street, I was playing football in the house, to my mum's horror, just recreating goals of VHS tapes that I had of West Ham from the '86 season, especially using my mum's curtains as a goal net and causing havoc. But everything was always centered around West Ham all the time. And then when I had the chance to go to my first ever game, which, would you believe, was a 7-1 win over Hull City, which featured a rare collector's item in a Stevie Potts goal, you know, I just fell in love with the club. I absolutely fell in love as a fan. And, even before I got to the game, just that feeling of holding my dad's hand and going into Nathan's Pie and Mash and seeing this army that were strangers but felt like family at the same time, and all the smells from the burger vans and just that working class spirit that I think encapsulated a lot of football clubs in those days before money came in and ruined everything. But yeah, special days, special memories. But for me, I was born a West Ham fan, and I'll die a West Ham fan. It's as simple as that.
Your intro to West Ham is pretty much exactly the same as mine, just under slightly different circumstances. Because you were born in 80, weren't you?
83.
83. Okay. So the reason, because I know you said that that obviously the FA Cup was the win over Arsenal is the biggest moment we've ever seen, and quite rightly so. But just tracking back a little bit quickly, my upbringing is West Ham, literally from this time onwards. It's been in my family for 4 generations, and with the family, mum's side of the family was born and raised in Barking, and they are quite Barking. And she met Dad over in Surrey, and I was born and raised over there. Always had West Ham in the life, and I couldn't escape it. The day I was born was when we beat Arsenal in the FA Cup final.
Is that right?
Yeah, seriously, about 2 or 3 hours later, and
Wow.
my uncle and my granddad were at the game at the time, and my uncle went on to West Middlesex Hospital where I was born. And the next day, our granddad came in, and apparently when he saw me on the cot, I was blowing bubbles. So, even though I didn't go into the family way for West Ham until a lot of years later, I did, because we weren't really a football family. I mean, obviously the Barking side of it was, my grandparents used to live opposite Bobby Moore's uncle. So when my mum and my uncles were growing up, they met Bobby Moore a few times, just in passing, sort of like nodding of a neighbour sort of thing.
Nice.
And so I say it's been four generations in the family, and it's been it's over 150 years of hurt, really.
Yeah, good for you, mate. It's a nice story. I was born in Barking myself, actually. Well, Barking Hospital, and then I grew up in Hainault, which falls under the Ilford postcode. So, but that's a nice story, John. And it is, it's a cliche because it's been said so many times. But, when it comes to proper football fans, the football club picks you as opposed to you picking a football club. And 9 times out of 10, it comes from your family, because a football club is representation of your own history and your own character. So it goes so much deeper than a game of football. It's territorial, it's who you are, it's where you're from, it's everything that's in your DNA, your makeup, which, when it comes to East Londoners and, people from Essex that have, moved out from the East End typically, we were the best in the world as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, agreed 100%. It's some of my best memories and my worst memories have all been at Upton Park, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Okay, but with me, one of the funny things was that I say we were a football family, but West Ham wasn't really in there, because living over in Surrey, my dad was a cricket fan and absolutely hated football. Called it a yobs game, which I could never argue about in any shape or form from his point of view. And but what actually brought me to West Ham, and I always kept an ear out from, always listening to the games on the radio and all that. But when I moved out of home, we were watching the place I moved into. We had Sky, and I always had a bit of a soft spot for Fulham, being being over in Surrey. And my uncle hates me when I say this, but I was very close to being a Fulham fan. And when we were down in the Championship after the first playoff final that we lost to Palace, that was the first proper time I actually got to watch football properly. And it came down to, there was a game in the Championship where it was Fulham versus West Ham, and it was West Ham. We played brilliantly in that game. I can't remember what the fixture was, the result was back in 2004, but it was because it was away at Craven Cottage. We played beautiful football, and I just thought, that's it. I'm West Ham now. I'm done. It's in the, like you say, it's in the DNA. It's always been bubbling away, but I just thought, nah, that's it. It's West Ham for me now. So obviously, one of the things that I absolutely trying to stop talking about on this channel, I've done this on every single video, is talk about social media. I can't stand the stuff. But obviously with you, that's where the nucleus of where you've got to now pretty much came from. So, because obviously you co-created Sex, Drugs and Carlton Cole. How did that start up?
Yeah, that was a strange one, because that was on the back of an argument, believe it or not. I was just browsing on a couple of West Ham groups, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of this group in question. But I know that the topic was about Sam Allardyce, and loads of people were giving him shit on there, and I just, popped up with my opinion, and it wasn't well received, and it just got out of hand. I mean, it was so fucking stupid. I mean, it got as far as having this confrontational argument with the admin of this group that then went into private messages, and I mean, I just never seen anything like it. It was fucking cringy, to be honest. So in the end, it literally just spontaneously forced my hand to say to him, do you know what, bollocks to you, bollocks to your group. I'm going to start something up myself, so I don't have to listen to the sort of shit I'm listening to now. And then I'm not even sure what I meant by that at the time, to be honest with you, but something inside me just thought, maybe there's something you can have a crack at. So I gave it a bit of a thought. Originally, it was going to be a group for discussion, but then I thought, I've got a few ideas and a few creations I'd like to bring to the forefront, i.e. not just discussion, but nostalgia, a bit of comedy, some creative writing maybe, guest writers would be the ambition. And that's what it then became to be in the form of a page rather than a group. And I wanted something that would stand out in terms of a name, something catchy, something charismatic, something that make people smile. So Sex, Drugs and Carlton Cole was born. And, some people in the early days, and even to this day, think that it was a tribute page to Carlton, which it never was. It was just a play on words. But it's just unbelievable, really, how that took off. And in hindsight, I look back now and it was only ever meant to be a bit of fun. But actually what came from it was real solid friendships, a platform to do what I do now, and just some fantastic opportunities. And you just never could have dreamt the journey I've been on ever since, really. I started the page up with a friend of mine that I went to school with, Kevin Slade. He still runs the page today. And that's allowed me to focus more on the West Ham Way side of things, which I do with X. And he's one of those friendships that I was talking about. And I think really with Sex, Drugs and Carlton Cole, I think we were doing good stuff and the followers were growing and growing and growing. But the defining moment for us were the interviews that we started doing. And they're very high-tech interviews. We're not in them. The question comes in the form of text, followed by the interviewee's answer. Really good equipment that was used, so it's all HD and it's different camera angles because we've got a couple of friends that are in the industry that done us a favour. And from that, people started to take a bit more notice of us, wanted to kind of know who we were, what our plans were. Some people wanted to work with us, etc. And then the rest is history where Sex, Drugs and Carlton Cole's concerned. But then, when it comes to the West Ham Way, I suppose that the flagship items for us is the podcast and the West Ham Way events, which I do with X. And it's just crazy, really, especially the podcast, how that's blown up. So, yeah, it's been one hell of a journey so far, and lots of memories, lots of friendships and opportunities that have come from it. I've loved every single minute of it.
Yeah, because I know that you did some, like you say, you did some interviews. Who were the people that you did the interview with on Sex, Drug and Carlton Cole?
Well, I remember the first one was Julian, which was a brilliant one to kick it off with. That was Julian Dix. And by the way, all of these interviews are still on YouTube. If you haven't watched them, then I recommend that you do, because although I'm biased, if I had nothing to do with them, I'd want to sit down and look at them because they are interesting. Good friend of mine, Colton Leach, I think was the second one. Then it was Bobby Zamora, and we went to QPR's training ground to do that, which was interesting.
But that was a bit running off.
Yeah,
you had to have a few padded jackets for that, I suppose, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing was, I don't know, we got maybe half hour into the interview with Bobby, and he started to get a little bit twitchy or whatever. And then off camera, we said to him, everything all right, Bob? I said, you're right for time. And he said, well, not really. He said, Rio's waiting in the car park for me, and I haven't told him I'm doing this interview. So so basically, indirectly, we kept Rio Ferdinand waiting half hour, wondering what the hell was going on, when he probably thought Bobby would be 5 minutes picking up his boots. So that was a good day there, and a really good interview there. But then I think we've done 10 in total. Kev's done one on his own now, featuring Bill Gardner, which is absolutely brilliant. So I think he's looking to carry that on. But we done 10 together, and the rest was a combination, and I'm going to forget some now, of Mark Wald, who I later developed a very good friendship with and thought of the idea with for the pre-match events. Jack Collison, Alvin Martin, Jimmy Walker, Matthew Everington, Frank McAvenny. And I probably missed someone now, but I think that's about it. But yeah, we had a brilliant time doing them. Brilliant.
Good. I mean, at the end of the day, it's great when you get to meet your heroes. It really, really is. It doesn't matter what level it is. I mean, I was very, very fortunate to meet Steve Craddock from Ocean Colour Scene. He's been a big, big influence on me for ever since I was a teenager, and I got a chance to meet him and his missus a few years ago, and I was just dumbstruck. It was just it's great fun. But your interviews as well, because obviously you've had quite a lot of practice for that, and the Phoenix FM radio show as well, which we'll come on to in a moment. But with obviously, because you co-host it with X, how did you guys actually become friends?
we well, we became friends, and this is one of the examples I was giving you, really, from the friendships that were born from Sex, Drugs, and Carlton Cole. Because X was one of those people that showed an interest in us after we started producing these interviews, and I think at the time he wanted to be more than just an ITK on Twitter. I think he wanted to create his own website, because I think there were different West Ham websites at the time that wanted him to guest write for them. And he just came to the realization, well, I could do that, or I could just start my own one. And that's what he did. He created the West Ham Way website, which subsequently became the West Ham Way brand, and we'll come on to that in a second. And I think he was just looking for different strings to his bow, really. I think he just wanted guest writers. Obviously, he wanted to create his own columns. And he was a fan of the interviews. And I think he just wanted us to be a part of it, whether we was writing or contributing with these video uploads. So I remember the first time I ever met him was in Queens, Upton Park, before a game. And yeah, obviously I know his real name now, but at the time he had some trust issues, and he gave us a bogus name. So I thought his name was Phil for about 3 months, until I was in the circle of trust. But we hit it off, and sometimes you just have that instant connection with someone. Then we did start working with him, and those videos are, I think, available on the West Ham Way website. And then we met again, got on just as well, had a beer again at West Ham. Then it developed into socials. And then what happened was, with the podcast, one of his followers on Twitter is the producer and owner of Phoenix FM, which is a community-based radio show in Brentwood. And he approached X and said, look, I would love somehow for you to be involved in the station. I don't really know how that looks at the moment, but, if somehow you can get your news across, and, I think you could really bring an audience with you, because they follow you on Twitter. I'm sure they'd tune into what you had to say on here. He had no idea who I was at the time, Paul Golder, the producer, probably no interest either. But X said, well, I'm sure I probably could do something like that, but what I can't do is host it. I want someone to sort of take the chair, create the structure of the show, and I suppose be the foundation that would allow me to spread my wings and do what I want to do when I need to do it on the show. So I was that person he had in mind. Kev obviously was a partner of mine at the time through Sex, Drugs, and Carlton Cole, so he came on the show as well. And then that was it, really. I agreed to do it reluctantly, would you believe? To start with, I didn't want to do it at all, because I didn't want to commit to something weekly. And then I agreed to do it bi-weekly. X still wasn't happy with that, so he bullied me even more into doing it on a permanent basis, which I did. And thank God.
I know how he feels, mate. I've been trying to get you on here for 5 weeks.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that.
It's all right. You had life and you had your family holiday and stuff. It's fine,
we meet at last, Mr. Bond. But yeah, and it's been no looking back from there, really. And I just think we make a really good team. We're similar people. We've got a hell of a lot in common. We get on fantastically well as mates. We have a laugh, and I think we work as a good duo on the podcast.
Mate, I agree 100%. I mean, when we were just starting to talk about stuff, I jokingly said to you that he's your second missus, because you guys do more than friendly banter. Let me put it that way.
Well, don't forget, we've shared many a hotel room around the country as well. And what goes on in that hotel room stays in that hotel room. Let me tell you.
Yeah, we'll move on from that subject. But yeah, no, I mean, I've absolutely loved it. I mean, I came across your the radio show. It's probably about this time last year, I think, and just absolutely loved it. And I've listened to pretty much everything since when you had David Gold on last summer.
Is that biggest show?
Yeah, it was brilliant. Really, really good. It was good to see his proper side of it. He was quite political with some of his answers and whatnot, but I've not missed a show ever since. I've always listened to it, and I'm not gonna lie. You guys, when you guys have your podcast, when you guys do it on a Wednesday, the reason why my preview videos go up on Thursday is because I'm listening to you the night before to get
some right?
What I need to talk about. Yeah.
Oh wow, I appreciate it. That's fantastic. I'm pleased you enjoy it. That's great. Yeah,
no, I do. It's the brilliant thing. You guys play fantastic music. I mean, when you had the Ribman on last week, music that I would never put in with, but beautiful, great track, really, really cool tracks.
Yeah.
And there's a bloke over in the States that he's asked me to mentor him. I mean, I've only been doing this for 2 years, but he's got some really cool beats, which I think the Rib Man would really like. Guys, go into the description and check on his link. Obviously not now, because I want you to stay around until this finishes. But it's a really cool guy. It's a guy called Fabian Romero. He's got some brilliant beats on there, and he's asked me a few tips on how to improve his videos. But they are really cool hip hop tracks. So definitely go and check that guy out. But as I say, no, I literally I always listen to you guys every night. Either try to get it live, or I'll stream it on Phoenix's website the following day. And as I say, it is a big influence on a lot of us, because I don't think a lot of West Ham social media ones, for that matter, users as well, give you guys the credit, because it always makes me laugh. Gives you guys enough credit, I should say, because it always makes me laugh that whenever I listen to a radio show live, within about an hour, people are quoting X, and quite rightly so, because he's a very reliable source of information. X, if you're watching this, mate, I am going to definitely ask you on here. I haven't been able to do it yet. I know he threw his pram out a little bit when he read out that question to you last week.
X, just to add on to that, X, he's only asking you on because he feels guilty that he's asked me first as well, mate. So just throwing it out there.
I thought you weren't going to mention that, but no. But honestly, he's one guy that I really can't wait to talk to. Just to find out his background the same way that we're talking about your background on it as well. But as I say, the radio, and also comes on to the next point as well, because obviously the radio show's really taken off. It's been about 2 years now, isn't it, give or take?
Yeah, I'm rubbish with timescales. I think so, yeah. Well, I know that we started it not long after we'd moved into the London Stadium. And I know that because we often joke about how refreshing and how exciting it would have been to have started it the season before, which was the last season at the Boleyn. And we probably, started that podcast at the darkest time possible for West Ham. But that's how I remember it. Yeah, probably, 2 to 3 years, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously off the back of that, you guys started up, as you touched on earlier, the West Ham Way events. So you said obviously that you came to a thought on it, but how much preparation did that take to start up in the unfortunately the now closed Working Man's Club in the East Ham Working Man's Club, wasn't
it? Right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Well, it started from a conversation between me and Mark Wald. And I used to speak to Waldy quite often, as I still do now. And I know that, and he'd tell you this himself, so won't mind me saying it, legitimate work, especially in a football sense, is something that he struggled to get since he got out of prison. Because, as it is with a lot of people, he has a negative perception in a lot of people's eyes for what he got put in prison for, which was, I'm not sure this is the right term, and he'd probably be pissed off at this description, but housing drugs, basically, for dealers, I think was the conviction. And, Mark being Mark, possibly knew more than he did, but wasn't prepared to reveal names or put anyone else in trouble. So he ended up, taking a fall whack himself and serving about 4 or 5 years of an 8-year sentence. So, that it doesn't make the corporate world of football froth at the mouth to offer Mark Wald a job. And that's been his problem now for quite a while. Having said that, and I'm going to contradict myself a little bit, you
do that quite a lot, I've noticed.
Yeah, I do. I am aware of that. But every now and then he would get a bit of hospitality work at West Ham, but he just wanted more of it. And that's really where he shines. That's where he enjoys himself most, is being in front of a crowd and making them laugh and hosting an occasion. And he said that's something that he would love to do. And he told me one day that Everton do something similar. He said that there's like a little pub near the ground. There's 10 tables of 10. People pay 30 quid to get in. And I think the people that run it just nip down to Morrison's, get cases of beer, put them on the tables. And then every now and then an ex-player would come in and have a chat with them, So it sort of hit a bit of a light bulb moment. And I said to Waldy, well, look, I'm up for looking into this because we've just moved to Stratford. I think with West Ham fans still pining for Upton Park and with some institutions still alive and kicking, there is potentially an opportunity to keep some of that magic alive in Upton Park by making something like this happen. And I completely bought into the concept of what Everton do, but I just wanted to do it better. So I gave it some thought. I had a lot of ideas very quickly, but I also wanted X involved because, one of the similarities that we've got is, we both like to think we're creative, ambitious people. So I think we'd bounce off each other quite well in that respect. But also he had a massive marketing reach. So I knew that he had a ready-made platform to tell people what was going on and when it was happening. So there was then a team of three. Waldy was going to be the host, and me and X were going to do the donkey work, if you like. And that's what happened. We found the venue, which was the East End Working Man's Club, which, we walked upstairs and really found a ready-made venue. I mean, you couldn't have sketched it better. It was absolutely perfect. So we knew that was going to be the case. But then obviously, as part of the offering, we wanted to do an all-inclusive drinks package to drink as much as you want, which, to be honest, scared the absolute shit out of us to start with West Ham fans drinking as much as they want before a game. We thought we were fucking mad at first.
Mate, yeah. That's fucking suicidal if you're a millionaire.
Honestly, mate, I think that was our biggest worry. But having said that, part and parcel of it is negotiating a decent drinks price with the organisation in question, and that is still the case now at O'Neill's, because you've got to exploit the fact that this institution would probably be shut if it wasn't for this event, and you can use that to your advantage. So you negotiate the drink deals. At the time we had the coaches, so we had to find the right provider of the coaches, negotiate a rate with them, get the security in, get raffle girls in, source raffle prizes. I mean, there's so much to it that goes on behind the scenes. Obviously, there's the creation of the music playlists and DVDs and projectors and screens that you show the nostalgic classic games and goals on. And then you've got to West Hamify the venue. You want people to walk in there and feel like they've come home and feel like they're part of that working class West Ham family that we tried so hard to create. And I think we did that. I mean, I think we was at the Working Man's Club for 2 years. I remember the first event we had was Frank McAvenny. He was the guest. That was mental. I mean, because it's the first time me and X have done something like that. And I remember the manager, Peter Bell, coming out and saying, "I think you've created a monster here." And then full of excitement, we go into the second event and 30 fucking people turn up. So it was a roller coaster of emotions, because the first one was amazing. Second one was shit. We lost money. We was thinking, oh, can we carry on doing this? Poor old Stuart Slater was a guest. I think he took it personally as well. But we stuck with it. And then we just created some fantastic memories along the way. I think from that day to this, I think we're standing at about 37, 38 events that we've done now. And every single one of them have been fantastic and memorable. And apart from getting everything else in place, luckily enough through me, X and Waldy, we've been able to use our network of contacts within the game as well, which is important. But yeah, equally, I'd say that's our proudest achievement alongside the podcast. We love both of them, and both of them are our babies, really.
I get that 100%. I mean, because with one of the things that is really, really cool that you guys have literally set up within the last couple of weeks, even though there was quite a lot of background work on it, is the first ever US West Ham Way event over in Las Vegas. There's a bloke over in the States who is watching it at the moment, Wally World. He's saying he's looking forward to seeing you guys in Vegas. So how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, this is something we're very excited about. So I'm pleased you've mentioned it. And actually, I'm not even sure if we've even really officially announced it, even though it's been announced. I mean, everyone that's going to the event is talking about it on Twitter. And I think we might have touched on the potential of it with the podcast. But it wasn't our idea, to be quite honest with you. We was approached by a fella called John. It's Las Vegas Hammers, who I think listens to our podcast, because we do actually have quite a large number of American followers, either on social media or via the podcast. And of course, it's different in America than what it is over here. They legally can watch every single Premier League game. Whereas obviously, if we want to do that over here on telly, you're going to have to stream it through some dodgy digibox. So they have full access to every single game in pretty much every single bar out there. And he approached us and he said, look, I'm aware of what you do. I'm a fan of what you do. And I would like to see if you're interested in taking the concept of the West Ham Way event in the UK and doing it in the US, because I think there's going to be a lot of people in America that would, either come that are in Vegas or will get connecting flights to be there in Vegas, or even people from London that fancy a cheeky little weekend away. And there are. So, I think between us, we thought it was a no-brainer, really. And it's a combination of a celebration of American hammers, because there's going to be a lot of them over there, and I love speaking to the Americans. I've done a lot with them from a West Ham perspective, and appreciate the fact that they listen and are as loyal as they are to us. So I'm looking forward to meeting a load of them out there, including that fella you just mentioned. And yeah, it's a chance to take what we do over here over there, and I think it's just going to be brilliant. I think we're going to be doing 4 or 5 days over there, me and X. Probably going to need a liver transplant by the time I come back.
And a bank transplant as well, I should imagine. No?
Yeah, no doubt. But I love the idea, and you know, we're going to see how this one goes. But there is the potential of doing maybe an annual West Ham Way overseas in America, maybe in different states, the states that are interested in West Ham. And then, you know, let's not forget, there's a Scandinavian Hammers, there's a Dublin Hammers, there's a Hawaiian Hammers, Bermudan Hammers. They're all over the place. There are actually Hawaiian Hammers in Hawaii as well, not just the Hawaiian Hammers over here. So yeah, possibilities are endless, but you know, it's all for the love of West Ham at the end of the day. So yeah, looking forward to it. And that's August the 17th. That's happening. So if you're interested, look on our Twitters, keep an eye on what we're doing, because we're going to be talking about it a lot more, and come and join us, because I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
And I take it it's up on the West Ham Way website as well, yeah? Or not yet?
I'm not sure. I'm going to have to speak to X about that, because behind the scenes it's gathering a bit of momentum. But from me and X's perspective, we're just kind of letting it simmer, and I think we're pretty much ready to hit the button on launching it. I know that there's been a landing page created, and I'm going to get shot for not knowing this off the top of my head. But that's been dedicated to kind of, you know, letting people know what it is, when it is, how to book tickets, what to expect from the event, etc., etc. So yeah, so that's where we are at the moment. But believe me, it's going to be very easy to find information and know how to book tickets when me and X take off with it.
Fantastic. I mean, when that does go up, I'll be more than happy to put it in the description of my videos as well. So in case anybody wants to click it straight through the website, if you are going to have somewhere where people can book through, I'm more than happy to promote that for you, mate.
Top man, John. I appreciate that, mate.
It's gonna be great. That you will also be able to get to speak to somebody that I'm trying to get on the podcast as well. Lena Starr. She's I know you've been joking about getting her on the podcast, your radio show, but she's confirmed. She put a video up over the weekend that she's going to go there as well. So that'll be interesting. That'll be an interesting.
Yeah, it will. I think X is trying his best to secure a double room with Lena and put me in a single on my own. I don't. He's not. For the record, he's not. So don't go see his wife. His wife for that matter. To be honest, I'm more concerned about sharing a room with X, because between us, I mean, we sound like a nail bomb when we snore in the middle of the night. It's just we're each other's worst enemies. So you know, we've got to iron that out. I think we're going to be pushing for some single rooms there. But no, yeah, lovely girl. Really interesting story as well as to how she became a West Ham fan. Because obviously she's from Poland. And yeah, if you get her on this podcast, I'm sure she'll have everyone's interest.
Definitely, especially when if we ever talk about what her main career is as well, for that matter. So that'd be quite
a lot more interesting than mine is, that's for sure.
But just bringing on something I wanted to talk to you about, Dave, because I don't know if you've had a look at the December fixtures, because you've obviously mentioned that in the States they get to see everything all the time.
Yeah.
But Amazon are broadcasting our games away to Wolves and Palace in December, so that they've basically got 20 games that they're going to be broadcasting, and they're doing two lots of 10 in the first week and the Christmas week. So we'll be able to watch those games without any hassle. As long as you've got an Amazon Prime account, then we'll be able to watch that without sweating it.
Yeah,
and having a decent stream as well, for that matter, because this should be high quality as well, for that matter. So that would be, I'm looking forward to that, because I certainly won't be able to make Wolves away, but hopefully try and get, as long as my points are decent by then, try and get some tickets for Palace away. But talking about it itself, just before the season starts, are you going to going to the Atletico Bilbao game?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, my life outside of West Ham is pretty much governed by what the wife tells me is on the diary, hanging just by the kitchen door there, the calendar. So, no, I'm sure she said that we're doing something then, and I can't get out of it. I couldn't think quick enough to think of a decent excuse. So it looks like I'm tied up with that one, unfortunately. So I know that I'm definitely not going to it, no. But looking forward to the season starting because, obviously you've got the pre-match events. I'm going to look to get to as many home games as I can because I'm not a season ticket holder anymore. Because I gave the season ticket up because logistically I couldn't get to the games by the time everything was tidied up and everyone was paid. So I gave that up so X could go, and then lo and behold, sure and shit, the way things work out now, I could have a season ticket. But looking to get to a few home games and looking to get as many away games in as possible because, I don't think away days have ever lost their magic with West Ham. I love an away day and I want to try and get to as many grounds as I can that I haven't been to before. So I'm looking forward to the new season. And of course, it's the excitement of having what was already a decent squad in place, in my opinion. But, lots of speculation and signings have already been made. So I can't wait, mate. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm really absolutely buzzing, especially for to see what's going to happen within the next 6 or 7 weeks as well, for that matter. But I just want to touch on something that that X did last year, and I'm going to ask, and you probably got a funny feeling what this question is going to be. Is X putting any fake rumours out again like he did last summer?
If he is, then I don't know about it. I think, to be honest, he achieved what he wanted to achieve last year when him and Sean Wetson got together and did that experiment, which was hilarious. It was hilarious on so many counts because they proved a massive point, made a lot of mainstream media look very silly because they were, discovered to be just ripping off news from Sean and X, and that was proved. But I think the funniest thing about it was how it propelled the fake player in question. I mean, he had news crews all around him from around the world, coming up to him with microphones saying you on the verge signing for West Ham. And I think even the manager pulled him in at one point and gave him a pay rise. So it was so funny. And the whole time it was fictitious and the fella didn't know fuck all about it. And neither did West Ham. But it all stemmed from the power that X and Sean Wetson has on the ITK stuff. So the answer to your question is no, not that I know of.
Because the funny thing is reading earlier today from his account that we're linked with Llorente. Now that's made me laugh because I've joked ever since the end of the season that we'll be linked with him, and that link's now come about, and I'm not really sure that's the sort of player we should be going for, to be honest. Third or fourth choice striker possibly, but not this stage of the window.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if he's a player that excites anyone. I mean, he certainly wouldn't be signed as a plan A. I know that much. But see, the thing is, when it comes to transfer rumours at West Ham, I don't listen to anyone other than X. I don't pay any attention to Sky Sports, newspapers, anyone like that. X is very well connected. He's got some very good sources in place, and I don't know. I think in football in general, and I think it's pretty common for every club to literally create a carpet bomb list of who they might potentially want to sign. Now, that might get filtered down to 3 or 4 main targets, to 1 or 2 key priorities, and then you might have your kind of plan Bs and plan Cs. But there might be a list of 50, 60 players that have been drawn up, and maybe 49th on that list just so happens to have been leaked. Now, there might be a 10% chance that we'd sign him, but somehow X or someone else has got hold of it and suddenly the West Ham community know about it. And the reason I'm saying this is, even when X says it, and he'll tell you this himself, until they're in the shirt, nothing is final. There's a lot of talk about Maxi Gomez, which does excite me more. Marco is still at the club. What's his mindset going to be going into the new season? Are we going to be seeing the Marco of old in that respect? If so, that's exciting. We link with so many different players. So for me personally, I'm just going to judge it at the end of the transfer window, whether it's a success or a failure, and go from there. But yeah, Llorente, let's just see what happens. But, I'm not horrified, but I'm certainly not excited.
That actually leads us on quite well to one of the questions from that Scott Davis from Denver West Ham is asked. It says, Dave, from your position as someone who knows some of the ownership a bit, are you surprised at how Dave Sullivan has backed off from past postings and signing activities? Yes, I am actually. I am because I think there are people within the club that would be the first to tell you that I'm using words that I've heard from people within the club.
and he might even be the first to admit this himself, he can't keep his mouth shut. Not because he's a troublemaker, not because he's a stirrer. It's just because he's within his nature that he's just a very, very honest person, at times too honest. But I think it's become apparent that it's best if, he does take a step back. I think he's done that. To be honest, I think a lot of them have. You look at the incredible transition of Jack Sullivan over the last 3 or 4 years. Arguably he was probably the most hated teenager in football once upon a time, when ridiculously he was allowed to have a Twitter account and say and do whatever he wanted to do with that, and embarrass himself.
When we got absolutely battered a few hours up beforehand.
Yeah, and I think he apologised for signing Shamak as well after he just signed him. And it's hilarious looking back now, and I'm sure he looks back and winces. But, these were the things that were happening that kind of created the PR circus that were West Ham. And, whilst I don't think we're 100% home and dry yet, I think we've massively improved on that. Jack's gone from a boy to a man now. He's very professional. He doesn't do what he used to do when he was a kid. From a social media perspective, he's then gone on to take charge of the women, and he's doing a great job for women's football in the world of West Ham, and credit to him for that. Good representation of West Ham. And then Dave Sullivan, you just don't hear from him, and I think that's the way it should be. It's the way it should be. And X won't thank me for saying this, but I think it's quite refreshing to see how much the club have tightened up a little bit in terms of allowing certain things to leak, which they've been prone to do in the past. So they've tightened up, and I think we're finally, after waiting long enough for it, seeing them conduct themselves in a professional manner now, which should be standard, really.
Absolutely. I mean, from a YouTube content creator's point of view, it's bloody awful, because we've hardly got anything to talk about. Same thing with you guys as well. The only there's hell of a lot less speculation that you guys talk about, other than what X brings up every week, because that's not speculation. That's it's 95% guaranteed that it's going to be happening in one form or another. And likewise, as a football fan, I'm loving it for the same reason why everybody else is loving it, because, like I say, he's kept his mouth shut. There's nothing coming out from the club in any shape or form, obviously, apart from when it was leaked on Claret and Hugh that we were going after Rondon. There's been a few other little things that they've talked about. I mean, the Fornals one, that cracks me up. That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen, because obviously, on the day that it was announced that he was going to be announced within 48 hours. Hugh put up on Claret and Hugh that the official sources are saying that we have no interest in this guy. And literally everything else comes out, and the article was taken down very, very quickly, and then obviously the rest is history. I mean, just coming to next season, I mean, because obviously we finished 10th. I said around at the end of the summer transfer window that's around about where I was expecting us to finish. Wasn't the best of routes to get there, but nonetheless we secured a 10th place position. What are your expectations for the coming season?
I think we should definitely be challenging for 7th spot. I mean, I say shoot for the stars. I don't even know if this would be shooting for the stars, but challenge for a top 6 place. I think we've got to show some ambition now. And, like I said earlier on in the podcast, I think we had or have a good group of lads there. And rather than losing players we don't want to lose, we're adding players we want to add. So we can only be stronger than we were last season. And obviously you have to look at, what everyone else around you is doing. But I've been saying all season, and maybe I'm biased, maybe I'm naive, that in my opinion, on black and white, West Ham are the 7th best team in that division, in my opinion. And if that's the case and people agreeing, that's the way it is, why can't we do it? Because really and truly, when you look at it, I think it was only inconsistency that stopped us from achieving a better place than 10th. We had it was tearing your hair out with some of the results we had last season. And there were games that you were going into where we should have won. And it weren't a case of we played well, but, we just lost to the better team. These were games where the players just were turning up and not giving a fuck. And that happened far too often last season. And we lacked a real winner's mentality last season, in my opinion. But hopefully, a full season under the gaffer and we're going into a new campaign, and hopefully that won't be the case. So another reason I'm excited, I'm expecting us to challenge for a 7th spot this season, and hopefully a better cup run.
Well, to be honest with you, Dave, I'm very, very surprised that it's taken you 45 minutes to swear. I've sworn at least once since we started this. So I'm quite impressed with that.
I'm blaming myself on this more than I'm on my own podcast.
Scott has also asked the same, pretty much this relatively same sort of question. He said, "How does Dave rate the work done by Husolios at this time, and has he seen anyone work like this in the past that you can recollect?"
No, I mean, I grew up in a football school where the manager done everything. So the technical director of football, or whatever they call them now, is when you look in the history of football, is a relatively new concept. And I think we've had a couple that have tried and failed before him. And to be honest, I wasn't necessarily putting up trees about him last season. The main reason being, I wasn't sure of just how much involvement he'd had in the players that we'd signed and the players that we've signed now. But if you look at some of the players that we've signed, I mean, for a start, Fabianski, unbelievably, was the one signing along with Carlos Sanchez that I wasn't happy with at the beginning of the season. I thought it was a waste of £7 million. You
and me both, mate. I when that came into fruition, I thought, oh Christ, why are we buying a relegated goalkeeper? But he's proved everybody wrong, and I'm loving it.
And I've never been happier to be proved wrong. And what a way to prove me wrong as well, by winning Hammer of the Year. So, you've got him. Well, Buena, I think he's incredibly underrated, probably because of the fee that we paid for him. I think if we'd have paid £40 million for him, he'd get a lot more plaudits than he has done. But I think that's a great coup, plucking him out from oblivion. Never heard of him. Diop, I mean, obviously there's a lot of speculation about him at the moment. I think he's been brilliant for West Ham, and he could be one hell of a player. And his age as well, his age just is the reason he's being linked for such a lot of money at the moment. His performance and his age is his potential. And, Fornals looks a player as well. Again, going along the right strategy of signing young players. So it looks like we're avoiding journeyman now for the first time in God knows how many years, and we're planning for the future. So collectively, you look at these great players we've signed, not forgetting Philippe Anderson, Yarmolenko. If Husolius is either 100% responsible for these players, or even 20, 30, 40, 50% responsible, he has to take a massive pat on the back. Because in my opinion, I think off the pitch, recruitment is the toughest job in football, especially when you're outside the top 4 in the Premier League, in my opinion, because the top 4 have the luxury of having open checkbooks, and all they have to do is have a look at some of the best, most established talent from around the world, and then choose 1, 2, 3 or 4 of those players, name their price, pay it, and they have those players. Whereas any club outside the top 4 have to look for diamonds in the rough, typically overseas. And you always take a gamble on these players, because even if they're performing in their divisions, are you going to have competition around you trying to sign that player? And even if you do sign that player, are they going to be able to perform in the best league on the planet? So credit where credit's due, because so far we've taken that plunge and we've signed players that I think have been great for West Ham and could be even better. So, no, I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. That really nicely takes us up to Neil Badger's question. Said, how do you see us lining up this season, given all the attacking players we now have? You can't help but think the philosophy this year is going to be, if you score 4, we'll score 5. Don't think we're in the Liverpool way of thinking just yet, but what do you reckon?
Do you know what? I think we probably are, actually, in the Liverpool way of thinking, because whether we're shooting ourselves in the foot, I don't know. But, I've been screaming out as a priority position for a central defensive midfielder to sit alongside Declan, someone young, energetic, strong, someone that could be everything that position should be. Prime example is another Declan Rice or a Kante type figure. Having said that, it's not what we've done, and I don't know if it is what we're going to do. And what's interesting is who's going to play? Who's going to lose their place? Because you've got Fornals, who's potentially the same position as Lanzini. Well, if we just sign Fornals for the amount of money that we have, we're not going to not play him. And if he plays in a number 10 role, what does that mean for Lanzini? And
just to interject on that, Dave, do you think that he is is kind of the same line of thinking where we brought in Jack Wilshere to be the cover for Lanzini while he was out, which obviously ended up Nasri being the cover for the cover. Do you reckon that could be the same sort of thing again?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, firstly, I think Jack was signed, even though I think he could definitely play a number 10 role, I think he was more signed as competition for central midfield. So, I know Fornals is quite versatile, apparently. So I think he can play centre mid. I think he can play number 10. I think he can play on the right. And I don't think he's an absolute stranger to playing as a striker. So he's got versatility there. But I just think it's incredible with the options. And do you know what question keeps coming back in my mind over and over and over again when you look at all the options that we now have? Where does Mark Noble play? Does he play? Because what's very interesting, right? I love Mark Noble as much as the next man, hands down. He's one of our own. He is Mr. West Ham. He's been an incredible servant to the football club. And on his day, he's a fantastic player. I mean, you've only got to look at the last 3 or 4 games of last season to see just how much he's still got in the locker. And everyone on social media pretty much says the same. But the amount of accounts I've seen tweet with excitement their predicted lineups for next season, and Mark ain't in it. So the reason I think that we could potentially go a bit gun-ho this season is because once again we've focused on attacking players, and I can see it potentially being Anderson on the left, maybe Yarmolenko on the right, battling it out with Antonio. Possibly Lanzini central mid alongside Fornals, with possibly Declan Rice in an anchor man position sitting in front of the back four, maybe, and then mixing it up. If we need to push forward and put either Fornals or Lanzini in that number 10 role. It's a loose prediction, who knows? But it's very attacking, arguably too attacking. But one thing's for sure, I think we're going to get excitement either way.
Oh, mate, 100%. The more I think about it, the more I agree with you. Even though you've been heckled, shall we say, of being a Noble hater for especially the majority of last season for saying exactly what you're saying now. But I agree 100%.
People twisting words. That's all that is. Yeah.
But it is. It's there. I can't think of from a logical point of view, especially for example, if we sell Obiang and we get somebody possibly, I don't know, maybe like Moy from Huddersfield, for example, one player I would absolutely love to see on the pitch. Again, is Noble going to be a bench warmer every week, or is he going to be the captain?
And if he is a bench warmer, who is the captain?
Well, that was the question I was going to ask you myself as well. So, because obviously, Winston Reid still being out, no idea if we're ever going to see him again, unfortunately, which he's the third choice captain behind Zabaleta. So say for example for the start of next season we have Fredericks at right back instead of Zabaleta, and like you say, Noble's on the bench. Who would you pick as the captain out in the starting 11?
Well, see, that is a very difficult question because I don't think we're left with many leaders. Great players, but not a lot of leaders in there. I mean, Declan is still very young, but he is very charismatic. I think he was a captain at youth level. He's now an international. So he's probably got a lot more maturity and respect from other players than maybe I give him credit for, but he is still very young. Having said that, yeah, probably Declan, probably. Marco Arnautovic will throw his hat in the ring. Don't know how I feel about that one, if I'm honest. Balbuena is called the general, I think, because of his leadership qualities and skills. I don't know how good his English language is, and with respect, I think that's going to be quite important when you communicate with other players. I think that's difficult. If I'm really pushed for an answer, I'd probably have to go with Declan, probably. I mean, what would you say?
I personally would think, I think out of the players that we've got there, the only one that would shows real leadership apart from Declan is Issa.
Yeah,
he really commands the back four a lot. A lot of people don't seem to notice it, but he really does. And He's obviously had captaincy experience with his previous club and the under-21s France team as well. I would try it. Again, as long as he's not singing like we saw on the kit launch video the other week, I think he'd be able to communicate himself quite well out of that. But talking about Arnautovic, again, this is Scott Davis of the Denver West Ham account. He seems to be the only one that actually he's asked 3 questions. I'm quite impressed with that. But he said, can we play 2 up top, or will Arnie throw a strop again and be moved on?
See, I don't know really. I mean, I don't think I'm as much of a fan of 2 up top as a lot of people are. I am quite a fan of the modern day kind of 2 central midfield, 3 attackers with 1 striker. I bought into that formation quite a long time ago as the formation to play in modern football, if you like. So I wouldn't play 2 up front. Having said that, and again, it's so difficult because it's a nice problem to have because we've got, an evolving big squad here. It does give us different options. At the same time, I don't want that to affect the gaffer knowing his best 11 because I think that's really important, and then having a set way of playing, which at the moment seems to be very attacking. I think that's going to be tough. Maybe we're going to see Marco benched. I mean, if we do sign a player of, say, a Maxi Gomez level in terms of his transfer fee, maybe we're going to see Marco benched. Because if we play 2 up front, again, who are you going to sacrifice from the midfield? Who loses their position?
I mean, we've got rid of 80% of our striking options.
Yeah,
think about it. We've Perez is gone. Obviously, Andy Carroll's going in a couple of weeks, along with my hero Adrian as well, for that matter.
Yeah.
And so that only, as it stands at the moment, that only leaves us with Arnautovic and Hernandez, and there's a very good chance now he's a dad that he's going to try and sort his future out and go pretty quickly as well, unless he's given proper assurances that he's not going to be a super sub that he has been for us and was with Man United and when he was over at Valencia as well. So, it's agreed 100%. It is a 4-1-4-1 formation as it stands at the moment. I mean, it's tricky. It really is tricky. But
you're going to see a lot of rotation potentially this season. This is where maybe we're going to get to see more of Pellegrini's in-game management, in terms of if he did play an anchor man position and we're losing the game, maybe he'd switch that anchor man to either a number 10 or just sitting off the striker and then replace, say, someone like a Declan Rice or Mark Noble with an Arnautovic sitting behind a Maxi Gomez, let's just say. I don't know. Maybe he's going to change it per fixture, which he potentially couldn't have done before because the squad was lighter than it is now. Because let's not forget, we've still got the likes of Yarmolenko coming back. That's going to be like a new signing. Interesting to see how he does. What does that mean for Antonio, who was arguably one of our best players towards the last half to the last quarter of last season, So it's incredible, really, to talk about so many options. And if Jack Wilshere gets fully fit and can stay fully fit, if birds can fly, if pigs can fly, I know. But if he can stay fully fit, what a player he is on his day. Where does he play? Who does he replace? It's a nice problem to have, but I'm not sure I know the answer at this stage, to be honest.
No, mate, I agree 100%. I can't wait for Yarmolenko to come back. I thought it was really unfortunate with that injury. That performance at Everton away when things were really starting to click.
Brilliant.
It started to click from when we played Arsenal, the second game of the season. Sorry, second away game of the season, I should say. But you really see the system working there. But yes, agreed. I mean, it brings us on quite nicely to James G's question. It says, if one of Lanzini, Antonio, or Diop had to go in this window to raise funds, who would you choose?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I'm not sure Antonio would be one, purely because I don't think you'd get a lot of money for him. And I think he's worth more to us with what he still has to offer, as opposed to the money that we would have to spend to replace him. So he's discounted for me. Diop and Lanzini, it's very interesting because, you know, on the one hand with Diop, we could potentially get a hell of a lot of money for a player that's had one good season in the Premier League. And there's no doubt he could go on to become a world beater, but you know, at the moment he isn't. But you'd pay that level of money because you believe he potentially could be. Obviously, you have to look at how much money we're talking here. I mean, is Diop worth the same amount as Lanzini? You know, I would hazard a guess and say that Lanzini isn't as worth as much as Diop, in my opinion. Lanzini, I think, is one of the most inconsistent players West Ham have. I struggle at times to see why West Ham fans adore him as much as we do. Now, I like him, and he's a great character, and he's been with West Ham for a while now, and he's produced some unbelievable moments for us. And we all cling on to the fact that hopefully he will be key for us in that number 10 role. And I think we've always had a big expectation on his shoulders since Payet left that he would fill that void. But he is also very inconsistent. So there is an argument to both. I would probably say Lanzini, because instantly, please God, we've got a potential replacement that could fit into his role with Fornals. If Diop leaves, I think we're back to square one trying to find a really solid centre half. So,
and also, especially if we're linked with the donkey from Man United, as that is an insult as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I would not want to see any player anywhere near the inability of Phil Jones. Absolutely not. No way.
Yeah,
he is. He's complete dog shit. How you doing for time, mate? Because we're getting questions in thick and fast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the moment, as it stands, I'm missing Love Island. So you carry on, mate, because that's a good thing. Normally, the one that sits me in front of that load of shit. So no, this is a good thing, mate.
Before we go any further, I just want to do a quick shout out to Dean on Twitter, who is he's contacted me about doing some carvings. You may have seen his Twitter account, that he does football carvings of shields and badges for all clubs, but he also does little coasters as well, for that matter, which he's offered to do for the channel. So I said to him, obviously I'll have to pay him for it, because I'm not expecting the geezer to do all that work and for absolutely free. But there is his email address is in the description below, guys. Drop him an email. The artwork is superb. After this podcast, I'll tweet the pictures he sent me out, so you guys can have a look at it. But they're very, very good prices as well. So I said that I'll do a shout out for Dean there, and his sign line of carvings. And also, I completely forgot. It's literally just come into my mind now, that I haven't even had it's been an hour yet, and we haven't even talked about the sponsor. It's 3retro.com. Dave, I know you're a big fan of retro shirts, so I'm hoping you'll be able to help me out with this, mate. There's a link in the description below that will take you directly through to the West Ham section of their website, where you can purchase retro kits from the 60s all the way through to the early 2000s, including the 76 home kit and the 98 FA Cup final away kit that is inspired this coming season's kits. There's also Umbro and Admiral track jackets, sweatshirts, t-shirts and polo shirts in there as well, so go check those out. Any purchases made through the link in the description below, the first 20 purchases will go directly to Isla's Fight. So guys, and you included, Dave, it'd be great if you guys can make some purchases on there, because I want to help out that fund as much as I can. So guys, please, the prices are pretty good, to be honest with you. You won't be paying any more than you would normally purchase it if you weren't clicking it through the affiliate link. It's just I get a little bit of a commission on there, but as I say, that commission will be going directly to Isla's Fight. So thank you very much for that, guys.
Good stuff.
There's also there's quite a few questions coming in as well. Gary Page says, Dave, do you worry that our crap training ground, I think that's a bit harsh, will cause more injuries again this season?
I mean, it is the curse of West Ham, isn't it? I mean, that's one of my biggest frustrations with West Ham, is the amount of injuries we had. And do you know what? I speak to Mark Ward about this, and I've spoken to ex-players about this, especially from the kind of 70s and 80s era. And you know, you look at players now, they're all finely tuned athletes and they watch what they eat, they watch what they drink, and they look after themselves and they get wrapped up in cotton wool. And you look at the likes of your Mark Walds and your Frank McAvennies and your Tony Cotties, and you know, the pitches in the 60s and 70s and 80s were awful. They didn't have nutritionists back then. They could eat what they wanted, drink what they wanted, go out on the piss. And as Mark Wald rightfully said, you know, we never got injuries like they do now. You know, he said, I think in one season, I think Waldy played something like 48 games or something like that without picking up a single injury. And that was the case with a lot of the lads. So I don't know if, you know, I know you've got your serious injuries at West Ham, but generally speaking, they're overprotected. I don't know. But I don't know enough about the pitfalls of the training ground, if there are any, to comment, to be quite honest with you. Dare I say, I just think we've been incredibly unlucky. And let's hope the curse breaks this coming season, because it drives me fucking mental.
Do you know what, mate? I really don't think it will, for two reasons. Because I know when I was on American Hammers TV with them a little while back, I was asked about this curse of West Ham, and I put it down to two things. Yes, you're absolutely right. Players in the 70s and 80s and even the early 90s, before the Premier League properly started, weren't picking up as many injuries as they were. But because I honestly think it's because it's got a lot quicker and a lot more physical than then. That's part of it. But at the same point, I honestly think that the reason why our players are getting so many injuries is because 90% of the players we're buying are injury prone. I reckon that's the real reason. I mean, in recent memory, with the exception of when he had his appendix out, when we were down in the Championship, over the last 10 years, how many times has Noble been out?
Yeah, exactly.
In the last couple of years, ever since Declan broke through, how many injuries has he had? It maybe it's a combination of, it's the fact that we're not bringing enough youth players through, because we know that they're pretty fine in terms of their injury records, or because we're going for the bargain bucket players even still to this day. I mean, don't get me wrong, spending £24 million on Fornals is a shitload of money. We wouldn't have seen that 10, 15 years ago, but that's an average price for footballers in the Premier League nowadays, and that's the problem. I honestly think that I've agreed with you. There is some curse. Because it doesn't matter what players we bring in, doesn't matter what managers we've got, doesn't matter where we're playing football, both as in training ground and also in the normal weekend stuff. There's something going on, and I honestly think it's literally just the fact that we're overly reliant on injury-prone players. If we bring in players that are completely clean, I reckon we're in the top 7. I really. Yeah.
And there's two things I would add to that as well, that potentially gets overlooked is, we've had long-term injuries to players which stand out a lot. So we're not necessarily always talking about players that are injured for 2 weeks or a month. You know, you had Lanzini miss the entire season, Yarmolenko miss the entire season, Winston Reid miss the entire season, Andy Carroll misses entire seasons, Jack Wilshere, you know, non-existent. So I think the longer the injury and the more amount of players that have a long injury, it makes it look collectively worse than it is, because you just don't see these players, they disappear. The other thing I would say is West Ham have never really been blessed with a depth in squad. We've always kind of put our eggs into certain baskets and they become key players. And if a key player gets injured, we have to bring in a player that isn't as good. Whereas hopefully this season, on the back of the conversation we've just had, if we was to lose Lanzini, Fornals could step in his place. Or if Yarmolenko picks up another knock again, you've got Antonio. If Anderson picks up an injury, maybe Masuaku could play there, because I'd love to see Masuaku in more of an attacking role. You know, if Wilshere's fit and Noble's picked up a knock, he can come in. You know, we seem to have more options now potentially than we have in a long time. So maybe that plays a key as well, that injuries maybe won't hurt us as much as they have in the past, because we've got more quality now that can come in and replace them. Please God.
Exactly, and this is one thing that I never thought I'd ever say, that we are starting to get 2 players for every single position. I agree with you 100%. I really, really want to see Masuaku in his native winger position, because we've seen it a couple of times. I can't remember. There was a game about halfway through last season where him and Creswell were playing at the same time. Brilliant down that side, absolutely brilliant football. It's just all right. So I appreciate your answer may change and you may contradict yourself with this, but If Lanzini wasn't as injury prone, would you still be in doubt about him, or do you think he'd be more consistent?
I'd be in doubt about his consistency because he's never proved me wrong. I don't think since he's been here, maybe with the exception of the season at the Boleyn, where he has solidly had a consistent season. For example, Declan Rice, incredibly consistent, game after game after game. Lanzini, I can't say that about him. So, you know, when the time comes when I will say I was wrong about Lanzini, he's a consistently good player that delivers, will be the season when he does exactly that. And until that happens, he'll remain inconsistent, in my opinion. And this is what frustrates me a little bit when, whilst you could argue he's on less wages than he should be in comparison to other team members, he doesn't warrant being up there with the highest paid because I don't think he's given West Ham anything over the last year. You know, so he frustrates me for different reasons. I love him, and on his day, he's incredible, but he doesn't have enough of those days. And that's what I'd love to see changed. If he can change that, he could be up there with the best of them. And I mean that because I think he's a great player, but he's got to do it week in, week out.
Except for, I mean, he always does it in the London derbies. You know, he scored against Palace. He scored against your favourite enemy a couple of times as well. Both of those home games as well, for that matter. So, but yeah, I agree 100%. Ben Davis has asked quite a very interesting question. What do you think of VAR coming in next season?
Yeah, VAR. I mean, I've got to be honest. I understand what it does. And I appreciate that it will protect the aggrieved in terms of the fans that are going to be broken-hearted if they didn't get a penalty that should have got a penalty, or there was a goal disallowed that should have been allowed. At the same time, that all part and parcel of the excitement of football for me. Whilst I've never enjoyed being a fan that got cheated out of a decision, I've loved it when we've got away with one. You know, and I think that is part and parcel of the game. And it worries me sometimes that they change football too much. It's already changed for the worse off the pitch from a commercial perspective. Just leave the game on the pitch alone, in my opinion, because I think that adds to the excitement. I really do. I mean, X made an interesting point in the podcast recently, and I agree with this. It is going to bite the arse of the hierarchy in the Premier League in terms of the football teams, because Man United have been nicking points for years and years and years because of who they are without VAR. So they might lose points this season. So there is an argument for that. But if you're asking me whether I'd take it or leave it, in an ideal world, I'd leave it because I just think it adds to the excitement of the game not to have it. It's the controversy, isn't it? But that's me.
I get your point. I see it 100%. I'm quite a big advocate for VAR, to be honest with you, because growing up, I watched more cricket, unfortunately, being hounded by Dad to watch it when we were younger. So we saw when that technology started coming in, and likewise with the tennis as well. It doesn't really, when this technology's honed, which will take a couple of seasons, it's not really going to slow down the game that much, because it's going to be no more. It's really going to be no more than the ref going over to the linesman and having a conversation about it. It really the time difference is pretty much exactly the same. My only issue with it is the idiots in charge of using it. That's the problem. That's where we're going to suffer with it. Suffer with something for example, Man City at home with Kevin Nolan. How many times was his big toe offside, and therefore those goals were ruled out? Would that decision still stand with VAR, or would it be a bit more lenient? Because I know that by the FA rules that if any part of your body that you can score a goal with, and if that's in an offside position, you're offside. But at the same point, is it really going to get down to that level of finicky? We'll find out. We'll see. But the World Cup proved why it's brilliant and why it needs a lot of work at the same point.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because, you know, if you look deeper into the topic, you've got technology and you've got human beings. And I think goal line technology, for example, you know, is a given. So a computer will be able to categorically tell you if that ball's crossed the line or not. So that's a banker. brilliant, great bit of technology, excellent. If you want to use it, great. But it's like you say, and you're quite right. I know referees have a really, really difficult job, but generally speaking, I think they're shit. I mean, they make so many mistakes week after week after week. And ultimately, you're going to get a shit referee stop the game to go and consult a shit referee about whether it was offside, whether it was a penalty. So you've gone from using advanced technology that you can hang your hat on to just going to another human being for their opinion. Well, why not just do that with the linesman like you've always done? What makes that person sitting behind a computer in any more of a better position, unless it's literally that they've got a better angle of it and can talk to him quicker about it? But I reckon you'll still see mistakes with VAR. And then if that happens, what's the fucking point?
But at the same point, it's going to be interesting, bearing in mind that it's all going up on the big screens as well. That's what like. Kind of like, do you remember what happened a few years ago that at Spurs under the Redknapp days when they actually showed the replay and they got heavily fined for doing so because they were awarded a penalty and the replay that they put up on the screen clearly showed that it wasn't a penalty, then they got fined by the Premier League and the FA as a result. But yeah, I don't want to have a too much of an opinion on it, even though I'm quite heavily for it. Yeah. Unless we've seen a whole season of it, I'd rather see a whole season of it and then judge if it's a worthwhile technology to have. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine, for example, we're playing Spurs at home, properly sold out, not those 2,000-3,000 seats that are completely empty, and yet it's 59,860 on the match the day figures. That it's properly sold out, and it goes with let's say, for example, we're playing Spurs at home, and the decision goes up on the big screen that's blatantly offside or it's blatantly a penalty and it's not given. Can you imagine what the atmosphere is going to be like when that happens?
Fucking pandemonium. And this is a trouble. I'm not sure that they would, in that committee, have grassroots football fan that would put forward a problem like you just put forward. Because can you imagine? It'd be chaos, absolute chaos. And I don't know. I just think football survived long enough without it. And I think you make a fair comment, really. Just review it after the first season. But I would rather not have it than have it, to be honest with you. Goal line technology, yeah, it's different. I think that's a good thing. Takes the controversy away from it a little bit, which I think is an exciting part of the game. But categorically, it's going to get the decision right. VAR, it's just a blind leading the blind, isn't it? It's just an idiot sitting in front of a computer telling an idiot whether he thinks he's right or wrong, and mistakes can still happen.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. Because at the end of the day, it's just human beings using it. Just turning away from domestic football quickly. What are your thoughts on Michael Platini being under investigation now for the 2022 World Cup?
Do you know what? I don't, and never have, and probably never will have any interest in international football or affairs. It will probably surprise you to know I don't even know what you're talking about. This is news to me. What's the story?
Well, it's basically because of the whole way that FIFA dealt with the way that it was all basically won. That he's being investigated basically on grounds of corruption. Is
this the bribe that he allegedly took to award it to Qatar? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I did know that. Well, I'm not surprised. You know what? Nothing in society or the world surprises me anymore, to be honest with you, because a pound note seems to be at the forefront of everything. So disappointed, but not surprised, really. It happens in every walk of life, doesn't it? It doesn't matter in what organisation you work in. It happens. So, that's life, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know, but it was just I wasn't surprised seeing that article, the story about it as well, because we all knew it was coming at some point. Neil Hogan's asked a really, really good question here. I said we're 2-0. I'm guessing that's up. Thanks to a brace from Sam Kerr. Aussies. Oi, oi, oi. No, actually, that's not a question. It's just about obviously watching the cricket.
Whatever he's doing.
Duke Hammer, Will we see Shake and Vac on board as a sponsor? We all know the carpet needs a Shake and Vac to bring the freshness back. I love that, mate. That is brilliant. I really love that, Duke Gammett. That's fantastic. Talking that actually leads into one of the things I want to ask you about. Did you see the pictures that went up today of the London Stadium with the baseball pitch? Have you seen it?
No. I've had a really full-on day today, so I've been out. I've been out in the world of West Ham, to be quite honest with you, give or take a minute or so. No, what's it look like?
It looks exactly the same as you'd imagine it to be, but they've kept the carpet around the corner, around all the edges as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
it does look. After this, mate, I'll send you the. I'll see if I can find the pictures. I'll send them over to you because I just love it. I love the fact that you still got the West Ham in the seats where they haven't moved, and you've got the claret carpet round the pitch as well. I think it looks brilliant. I really like it.
You know,
you guys are
about it. To be honest with you, I'm a big fan of the carpet. I mean, we've had a lot of fun with that on the podcast and on social media. But jokes aside, I think it looks really good. To be honest with you, it's made a difference.
And who better to announce it to the world than Antonio with his goal celebration?
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. Superb. I still think for the opening ceremony, you know, they should get Antonio just laying on the carpet, stroking it, whilst they raise me on some sort of centrepiece coming out the centre circle, playing my fingers on some sort of table, just resounding around the stadium. But I'm just throwing it out there, you know. I'm not even saying I'd accept it. I'm just saying, you know, I'm an ideas man, brainstorming.
Man, if you want to give us a drum solo at any point, mate, just go tap away.
Well, we haven't discussed the fees, so we won't get carried away.
Talking of fees, actually, one thing I just wanted to hopefully get some reiteration from you on is the fact that you received nothing from Phoenix FM for doing the podcast. It's all off your own back in the same way that we're having this conversation now, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, because I know that you've had some grief. Well, you and X get grief on quite a few things anyway, but everybody seems to think that anybody that does anything West Ham related in the public eye, we're in the back pocket of the club. And I know from when I started this channel up, a few people asked me. For example, I got a question the other day from a viewer saying that him and his dad or his granddad would put themselves down for the waiting list and asked me how long is it they're going to be waiting for. I said to him, I've got the slightest idea. It's just I'm taking it as a massive compliment because I'm obviously more professional than I think, but at the same point, you know, it's worrying that anybody that talks about West Ham on YouTube, apparently we're all affiliated with the club, and none of us are, apart from obviously the guys that do the official videos.
Yeah, it doesn't worry me, mate. To be honest, I couldn't give a fuck. I mean, you know, when I first come into this, obviously, you know, we've had our moments, me and X on the podcast, and certain people have given us grief for this, that, and the other. Genuinely speaking, I'm so thick-skinned to it. It doesn't bother me. You know, the way I see it is, if people don't like what we have to say, don't listen to the podcast. If they don't like what we type, don't follow us on social media. And if you don't like what we do at the events, don't come. And we're lucky in a sense that the pendulum swings more positively for me and X than it does negatively. So whilst it stays that way, I'm a happy man. And I think, look, at the end of the day, social media is social media. It doesn't matter who you are, you're going to get people digging you out, and there's a prick in every rose bush at the end of the day. You know, that's the bottom line. And it really doesn't bother me. I don't tend to give it any airtime anymore. People will be people. And it's a shame because you'll get a small minority of people, or even one person, that will be negative about what you do or say something fucking stupid because they're feeling brave behind their phone. And it takes the edge off of all the really, really good people that are on social media. And there are, you know, I think sometimes too much attention is paid towards the people that are negative towards the hard work that people do. And it's sometimes easy because of that to overlook all the good people that we've met and all the positive comments that we get. So, yeah, it doesn't bother me, mate. It doesn't worry me at all.
We'll start wrapping this up, Dave, but there's a few other questions I just want to ask you. Unfortunately, guys, I don't think we'll have any more time for the questions in the live chat. I'll ask one other in a minute, but one thing I wanted to ask you, Reece Oxford, and obviously Bilic at West Brom. Do you if that is true and that does occur, do you reckon that's going to be a good appointment for him at £4 million?
Well, first and foremost, good luck to Slav. I love him as a fella. I've got nothing but respect for him. And I'm really pleased to see him back in football. And I wish him the best of luck at West Brom. If I was Slav, I wouldn't touch Oxford with a barge pole. I wouldn't. I think he's got a terrible attitude. I think he was given far too much money, too much too soon, in my opinion. He's given nothing to West Ham, really, other than a headache. He's underperformed at every club he's been to on loan. You can't necessarily take this as gospel. It's just my opinion from what I've heard. But I think his agent is bad news as well. So I just think, if Slav doesn't take him, someone's got to. But good luck to them. Good luck to whoever takes him, because I've got no time for him whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I just think he was offered a new contract way too quickly. Only if I remember correctly, he only had 2 appearances in his debut season. Obviously, that great game against
away, which was brilliant. Got took off at half time, I think, at Leicester at home, and I don't think we've really seen him since.
Exactly. Yeah.
Again, this is speculation, so nothing I'm saying is factual here. But I would never knock him or any other player because he hasn't quite made it at West Ham. But where I have a real problem is that when someone has a bad attitude and they play for West Ham and they don't give 110% and they don't want to become a player and contribute to West Ham United, that's when I have an issue with it. And I think, and I don't have any facts necessarily to back this up. It's just an opinion based on certain things that I've heard. I think he is that type of player, and we don't want characters like that at West Ham.
No, we've got enough in the starting 11 as it is, unfortunately.
True, yeah.
Because you and me agree on Arnautovic.
Yeah.
Because I just want him to be back to normal. That's all anybody really wants. We don't. As you guys touched on the podcast quite a few times. If he's not happy with what his brother's saying, then tell him to shut up. Because it's actually 90% his brother agent. So, and that's the problem. But one question I wanted to ask you, because I know from I think again it might have been when you were on American Hammers with Lee and Tim. You said that you were trying to get hold of you were leaving messages for Di Canio, obviously for the events. Out of everybody that you've interviewed, who has been your favourite that you've been able to speak to?
Oh, yeah, it's a good question. Well, straight away, I would have to put Alvin Martin up there. He was one of the interviews that we did for Sex, Drugs and Colton Cole, and it was a full-on hour of just an education into the man's career and time at West Ham. And there's a real story with Alvin. He's been doing it now. Well, he was at West Ham for 20 years, should I say, an incredible amount of time. But this was a boy, really, who came from Liverpool to the East End and shared digs with Keith Robson. And there's some respective stories with that are really funny. Right through his career. And he's played under different managers, been in different dressing rooms, and just adopted West Ham as his own, as we adopted him as one of our own. And it's a fascinating story. I could listen to Alvin for hours and hours. And we've had him at the events as well. And he's like a stand-up comedian. So Alvin's the full package for me, really. But genuinely speaking, everyone brings something to the table. Everyone is brilliant. I remember we had Steve Lomas at an event. I don't even know why I had this perception or expectation, but I didn't think that he'd be the character that he was on stage. He was hilarious, and it's just so many. I mean, in the events itself, we've had close to 40 different guests. On the podcast, I don't even know how many guests we've had, to be quite honest with you, over the phone or in person. Then, of course, we've done the interviews. So there's so many people I've met and continue to work with. And in their own right, they're special, which sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, but that's the truth, They're brilliant. It's been such a privilege working with these people, and many of which you've grown up idolising,
One of the my most favourite interviews that you've done was Harry Redknapp. I absolutely love that. I know a lot of people don't like him because of what happened before he became my manager and everything, but he does seem a absolutely lovely bloke. And what he said about Frank Senior, Frank Junior, about him as a kid, it pains me that we still to this day we treat Lampard in the way that we do. I mean, obviously there's speculation about him being linked to the Chelsea job now that Sarri's on his way to Juventus. Do you? I think I know what the answer is going to be to this, but do you think now is the time to put everything aside and just treat him with a bit more respect?
I don't know why this was ever the case, to be quite honest with you. You know, it wasn't with Joe Cole, it wasn't with Rio Ferdinand. Frank Lampard took an unbelievable amount of shit at West Ham for no reason. I mean, you say that to the fans that were the ones giving him shit, and they'd say, well, it wasn't for no reason. He was getting, you know, preferential treatment because his uncle was at the club and his dad was at the club. Oh, come on, you know. So what? Look at the player he became in his career, and look what he done for Chelsea. He was obviously always improving. And Frank Lampard wasn't a bad player for West Ham, you know, but West Ham fans just treated him like shit. And I've never understood, first and foremost, why we ever had a problem with him. So to answer the question of, is it time to nip it in the bud? Yeah, of course, because we never should have fucking started it in the first place, in my opinion. And then, of course, you know, West Ham fans are not happy about some of the things that he said when he left, but I'm not being funny. It's human instincts. If you get poked with a stick, you're going to react. And that's all Frank Lampard did. And one of the most, I suppose, really interesting moments on that subject on the podcast with Barry Redknapp was when he came out and said, look, Frank loves West Ham. You know, he grew up loving West Ham. Every picture he ever had of Frank was in a West Ham kit. And what was really sad is, I think as fans, we drained that out of him for no fucking reason. And I think that's sad.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. I mean, I just don't. I know it's an old school mentality and everything, but I don't see the point of giving a player grief. Like for example, when we have Leicester at home, and the amount of grief that the old Steptoe Senior gets every time he's on the pitch and comes down to the Bobby Moore lower, all that grief he gets, and then our fans react when he reacts to the taunts we're giving him. It's exactly the same way. You're absolutely right. I mean, me and AJ touched on it last week, and when we were talking about that exact same thing, was the fact that it's ridiculous to have a go at somebody constantly. And then, I mean, like for example, I was at Chelsea away about 5-6 years ago. My throat was so sore at the end of that game. The amount of songs you sing, like you touched on earlier, you know, there's nothing better than an away atmosphere. It's absolutely superb. The only song I didn't participate in was "You've Let Your Family Down." That was being done at Lampard for exactly the same reasons.
Yeah,
it maybe because of it's, you know, he's Frank Senior's son, and you know, the whole Redknapp thing, and maybe there was a lot of people that took it personal because when we got relegated, we sold him on to Chelsea, and he's you know, he's been quite famously quoted a few years ago putting in the old chairman's birthday card a couple of years back saying, thank you for signing me, otherwise I'd still have to play at West Ham. A lot of people reacted big time to that, which I get because it's fueling the fire. But at the same point, as fans, we're culpable for all that problem in the first place.
I mean, I'm not being funny. You know, Frank Lampard Senior, I think he's the second most capped player at West Ham of all time. I think that West Ham fans have let his family down rather than him letting us down. Because if I would have given, as an East End boy, 20 years of my career to West Ham United, and the West Ham fans treated my son like that, I'd say, fuck you. Bollocks. If that's what you think of me, if that's how much respect you've got for me after all the years of service I gave to West Ham, that you would treat my son like that for no reason, bollocks to all of you. So can you blame the Lampards for being the way they are?
100% not. And this is what worries me in 10, 15 years, or maybe 20 years' time. If Noble's little boy starts becoming...
It's no different. Yeah, exactly. If Noble then becomes the assistant manager at West Ham and, you know, his son is not a bad player, maybe an average player at West Ham, you know, how are they going to treat him? I don't know. Time will tell. And then on the flip side, listen, I will back West Ham fans to the hill. I think we're the best fans in the world, ironically. You know, I'm a West Ham fan myself, and, you know, I go into many reasons why I think we're the best in the world. But when Slaven Bilic left us as a player, he dumped us on his arse. He slagged us off in the papers saying, I've got ambition, I want to win trophies, I want to leave West Ham, can't wait to join a big club. Not a word was said. We treated him like a hero when he came back. I just think sometimes it's double standards. I don't really understand West Ham fans at times, to be honest with you, and there are a couple of examples, but yeah, it's a shame. But what can you do? We can't change anything, can we?
Exactly, mate. And just one final question, because he's going to have a go at me if I don't ask this question, because he's a good mate of mine. There's Darren that's over in Bangkok. I know he's gonna put this down in the comment section after this, because obviously it's quite ridiculously early over there at the moment. What is your favourite Thai curry? Is it red, green, or yellow?
I've never had a yellow curry, if I'm honest. Probably Thai green. My mother-in-law used to make a fantastic Thai green curry, so I think I'd go with Thai green.
Yeah, me personally, I prefer red. There's something about it. This feels a little bit more spicier. I don't know. Maybe it's a color association thing. And one final question, mate, before we wrap this up. Fremad 007. Would you say that there is still a divide between fans in the club, and if so, what could be done going forward? This was one I was going to ask you, but I'm glad that he's put it in the chat as well.
Yeah, not really. I mean, the thing is, football is such a cutthroat industry. You know, everything in relation to West Ham is a results-based business. When we're winning games, people don't tend to moan about the stadium. But when we're losing games, everyone uses that to throw shit at the board, for example. And when we had a massive divide in the fan base, was at probably the worst time possible, was during an awful transition into the new stadium. Results weren't going our way. There was pitch invasions taking place, marches being planned, and there was a lot of fans with a lot of difference of opinion that, because of what was happening on the pitch, just was like a volcano of emotions that just erupted and sprawled into fights in the crowds, fights outside the stadium, abuse on social media, and it was a horrible time to be a West Ham fan. Thankfully, now some time has passed, the squad's picked up, results have picked up, the board have finally put their money where their mouth is and are doing a decent job as it stands, and we've got happier times at West Ham. The fans have shown some more togetherness. You'll still get dickheads on social media. You know, they exist in all walks of life. But generally speaking, I think, you know, I still think we're one big family. Always have been, always will be. And families fight, don't they? So hopefully we're over the worst.
Well, I hope so, mate. But one of the funny things that I saw earlier, I'm just trying to find it while we're talking, is that Claret and Hugh, as they always like to do, put a poll for people to put their votes down, and unless I can't find it. Oh, here we go. Yeah, they put a question up asking people's opinions on where is it? It said, would Pellegrini have come to West Ham at the Bowling Ground, and would Felipe Anderson have snubbed us without the London Stadium? Their response to that was 75% of their audience that asked it, 1,255 people, said yes. Do you agree with that?
What, they would have snubbed West Ham?
Yeah.
Yeah, quite possibly, because if you look deeper into that, going one further, and I know times have changed in football, that's a fair argument, but would we have had the wages to have offered Pellegrini and Anderson if we were still at the Bowling Ground? Would we have had the transfer fees to spend? You know, that's one element of it. Maybe we would. I don't know. But it's a fair argument to say maybe we wouldn't have. But without a doubt, I mean, love it or hate it, it's one of the most iconic stadiums in world football. And I think it's beautiful. It's lost its magic. It's not the working class spit and sawdust stadium that we all fell in love with. But part of my acceptance towards that is that football isn't a working class sport anymore. It isn't just West Ham. You know, that's the way football has gone, and it's the way it's going. So you either accept that or you don't, and you live in the past. And I've chosen to accept it. And not only have I accepted it, I actually watch football there and enjoy it, especially when West Ham win. So I can imagine that on top of that, when players come in, they see the stadium. I can't see many players going there saying, I don't want to play football here. And I don't know. I just think collectively as well, you look at the ambition that we've got, the squad that we've got, the wages we pay, the transfer fees we pay, the stadium we've got, you know, the board, no doubt, saying that this is what to expect moving forward. Pellegrini's going to buy into that, isn't he? So, yeah, I'm not surprised really at the poll results.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I mean, as I say, it's been 4 generations at the bowling. So that was a hard. It was like pulling skin, knowing that we're not going to be there anymore. But at the same point, you know, as football fans, we want progression every single season. And then the only way that was the only one of 2 options really that were available to us was going to a different ground, or that redevelopment of the East Stand, which we found out last year technically was actually about to go ahead. So but at the same point, would the inclusion of a bigger ground have a better impact in that local community? I mean, one of the things that I don't miss about going to the bowling, especially an hour or so before kickoff, is Green Street. That's bloody dangerous. It is bloody dangerous on that day.
Fucking nightmare. No, I don't miss that. And I think there was something like, in terms of logistically, and I don't know where this has come from, and I could be wrong, but logistically, West Ham was up there as one of the worst in Europe to get in and out of when we was at the bowling ground, and apparently now one of the best. And listen, I can't quote any stats or figures or facts, so maybe I'm wrong, but I've heard that on a few occasions now. And you know what I think is absolutely key as well is another reason why it was so hard to leave the bowling ground is because we're leaving a ground and an area absolutely steeped in history and moving into a place that has no history. Well, we're making history in that stadium to fall in love with. And let's not forget, it's a generational thing. One day, me and you ain't going to be around anymore. And our kids who never experienced a bowling ground will grow to love the London Stadium because that's the only thing that they can love. And please God, they'd have experienced some fantastic times there. I've experienced some fantastic times there. When we beat Tottenham 1-0, I think Lanzini might have scored the winner. That place was electric. And we went to casino after, and the whole casino started singing Bubbles. And, you know, the longer time goes on and the more years we have there, we'll make our own memories and we'll make our own history. And before we know it, probably unintentionally, start to get emotionally attached to that stadium. But that is going to take time. And I just think until that comes, just embrace it, get behind the boys, do our job as football fans, and then just hope for happier times at West Ham. And I think we're going in the right direction.
100%. I mean, obviously, when we walk through there, and we're getting checked for our cards and whatnot, and you know, you walk through and you see the tarpaulin over the seats, and
yeah, it's not ideal, it's not perfect.
But I mean, I've maintained many times it's a beautiful stadium. I don't class it as a football stadium. You can play football in there. You know, like you say, we've seen some great moments over the last 3 seasons now, but it's not a football stadium for me. That old romantic side of it is always going to be there. A football stadium to me is the bowling, Craven Cottage, to a lesser extent, excluding the natives, Stamford Bridge, little intimate venues. It's like, for example, when I go to when everyone says, you know, do you fancy going to Glastonbury, or if you want to go to something like that, I say no. If I want to go and see a band, I want to see them in something like Brixton. 3,000 people there, an intimate feeling, and we don't have that anymore. And that's what people miss about it. And but we can't go back there. At the end of the day, there's nothing in there apart from obviously a couple of the new flats that are named after players. And you know, I'm very, very grateful and glad that the 66 statue was staying there forever. I'm very, very happy about that. When it was first mentioned about it being moved, I said yes, by all means, bring it. But I'm glad that it's staying there because it's like a blue plaque that everybody will remember that that's where West Ham were.
See, I disagree. actually. I disagree. I think that statue should have come with us, because I think, you know, to feel like home, we need as much around us to remind us of home. And this is our new home. And I think things like that would have been a real trigger point and a real mark of respect to our history. The other point I'd make is, you know, I don't know to what extent the council would look after it, but realistically speaking, is it going to be looked after? Would it deteriorate? How many people would go out of their way on a match day to go and see the statue? So will it be underappreciated? Because let's not forget, right? And this is a really important point, I think. The amount of people that I saw moan about the institutions and the local businesses in Upton Park going under since we moved to Stratford, right? If something like 1% of West Ham fans on a match day did a 3-mile detour, that's all it is, a 3-mile detour, to have their pie and mash at Nathan's, or their beers at the Bowling, or at the Central, or Queen's, or wherever it may be, or the East Ham Working Man's Club, then those institutions would still be trading today. So, and they didn't. So subsequently, those institutions aren't trading today, with the exception of the Bowling, and I think Queen's is still open. So how many of those fans would actually go back to look at a statue they've seen a million times before? So I actually think it would be more loved at the London Stadium as part of our history, in my opinion. And, you know, you've got the reminder there of the murals up there, which is great. Flats are named after players for what it matters. I don't know. But, yeah, maybe some mark of respect, but I don't know. I think it should have come with us personally. Maybe worst case, even a replica put in its place. But, yeah, that's just me.
I still think UNX should lobby for the steaming carton coal.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, that'd be great, wouldn't it?
But I mean, mate, you can make a very, very fair point with that. I mean, when I spoke to AJ on Saturday morning at Kiwi Hammers, we talked about the fact that because he never got a chance to go to the Bowling, because obviously being over in, I think it's Wellington, I think he is, that I basically touched on it, the fact that I agreed 100%. It's a bus journey away.
You could walk it. You could walk it.
Exactly. You know, it's
if people cared that much, they would have done it, wouldn't they? And they didn't. And they knew those local businesses were dying. And they, you know, I'm not having a pop at people here, but you know, they could have changed it and they didn't. So they couldn't have cared that much. No,
but mate, Kev, honestly, it's been absolutely brilliant to have you on this. I'm sorry that we've gone over the normal hour that I was trying to plan to. We're almost 2 hours. I don't know what it's been like. That, as I say, the podcast I did with AJ, that was an hour and 40 minutes. This has been roughly exactly the same. But that's what happens when you get to fans about West Ham. I could probably do a 24-hour broadcast about it, to be honest, if I could stay up for that length of time. Yeah. But mate, it's an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and we've had some good conversations tonight, and I've just had a look on the subscriber count. There's been 5 new subscribers just in the last 2 hours.
Brilliant. So, that'll make up for the one that I lost you when you announced that I was coming on.
and then some. I've never had that amount of people. So it's obviously shown that there's been a lot of people out there that have really enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed talking to you, mate. Right. And I will definitely try and get myself down to O'Neill's, my old watering hole, for one of your events. Definitely 100%.
Always welcome, mate. Always welcome. And thanks to the people that put their questions forward as well. I appreciate that.
There's been some fantastic questions. Do you know, with when I did the podcast with AJ on Saturday, I was worried that the live chat wasn't working properly because we had a bugger all, and through that and this one, it's been non-stop answers. And I'm sorry, guys, that I wasn't able to answer every single one of them, but it's just, this has gone on longer than I was originally planning to. But guys, thank you very much for your time. If you're new around here and you've liked the channel as a few others have done tonight, then by all means, please click the subscribe button. If you've enjoyed the video, then by all means, please click the like button. You know, 13 people have already, which again is very, very another record breaker for this channel, albeit it's only been up for a couple of years, but we've had a great time tonight. As I say, share this content with anybody that you feel may want to watch the channel as well. But in the meantime, guys, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you very soon.